Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm back home in the pain cave. I've hung up my Haute Route medal. I just want to say thank you, first and foremost, before we get in this video, for all the support from that Haute Route event, whether it be on Strava, YouTube, Instagram. It was well worth going out there and doing that event. It was a tough old week, but very rewarding. It sounds like you all enjoyed the videos. If you haven't gone back and watching yet, I'm going to link the playlist down below in the description. You can check out all 6 or 7 videos from the event right there. Now this is a bit of a follow-up video because not that anyone requested it, but I did think it would be an interesting one. You see, I want to try and compare rather crudely a 1-week professional bike race to the Haute Route Alps. So they're both 7 days long. They both have, a lot of climbing, both have a lot of hours on the bike. Now what's difficult is I've never done a stage race when I was a professional that directly compares in terms of high mountains or elevation gain. So instead, I've kind of picked one stage race that I think, because it's been in the news recently and just finished, maybe many of you will be familiar with. And that is the Tour of Britain. I raced that back in September of 2019, just a month before I became British hill climb champion, funnily enough. I'm going to throw up on the screen a comparison chart. You can see each of those stages broken down into time, distance, and training stress score. Again, this is for entertainment purposes only. It's just an interesting comparison. Let me know if anything stands out to you, and if you have any questions, even from racing the Tour of Britain, for example, let me know in the comments down below. But make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. So on the left hand side we have the Tour of Britain, on the right hand side we have the Haute Route Alps, which is of course billed as the hardest 1-week cycling event in the world. Now let's draw the comparisons. So although the Haute Route Alps stages are definitely not as long, and for the most part the intensity comes from just climbing. When you hit a 20-kilometer climb, you essentially just settle into tempo or threshold for the whole of that climb, rinse, repeat all day long. Now I've raced many 1-week stage races over the years, the Tour of Korea, the Tour of Japan a couple of times, the RAS in Ireland, but none of these events really had any big high mountain stages, maybe apart from the Tour of Japan where we did a hill climb up Mount Fuji, but that's a different story altogether. None of them have the density of climbs and mountains that the Haute Route had. Now call it spooky, but both of these events had a time trial. And that's another reason why I wanted to use the Tour of Britain for this comparison. You can see from the totals, we end up riding around 27.5 hours over the course of the 7 stages. Of course the Tour of Britain is going to do a lot more miles, a lot more kilometers, just purely on speed. Like virtually every day, you're riding at minimum speed of 40 to 43 kilometers per hour average. On the flattest days, you're getting close to 50 kilometers per hour. The Tour of Britain is very much dictated by the World Tour teams, the riders that have the big stars. What they say goes, and they dictate the pace and how the race is going to unfold. That's an important point to remember because we'll come on to something in a second that will double down on what I mean there. In terms of training stress score, again, they're very similar. However, stage 5 of the Haute Route Alps had to be estimated because that stage was actually cancelled because of very poor weather. One thing the Haute Route Alps does trump the Tour of Britain on though, and that is total elevation gain. But it's no surprise that even at the TOB, we're still climbing an awful lot over that week, just essentially because we're going so fast. Riding at 45 kilometers an hour will flatten out any little climb that you do, and you get to the top before you even recognize it's a climb. And also riding in a bunch, shoulder to shoulder with people, you don't tend to notice when the road is going up as much as you would if you were riding on your own. Now going back to what I said briefly about, the World Tour teams dictating the pace, they make it hard when they want to make it hard. If it's a crosswind, if there's a tailwind, if it's a particularly difficult section of the course, they will light it up. And that is one of the major differences with professional racing to many other races that I've done in my past. And that is When it's hard, it's really, really, really hard. When it's easy, it's pretty easy. And there is a similarity there with the Haute Route Alps. When you're riding up the climbs, you're going pretty hard, not max effort, but pretty steady. And then on the descents, you're pretty much coasting, you're recovering. The big difference is, of course, the actual distribution of your effort. And there is no surprises here when you look at the power graphs and the time in power zones. On the left, we have the Tour of Britain, and on the right, we have the Haute Route Alps. A lot of time spent in that power zone 3, power zone 4, power zone 2, and obviously descending, doing 0 watts. But in the Tour of Britain, yes, there's a lot of freewheeling, involved. There's also a lot of sprinting out of corners, sprinting onto the back of the peloton in a crosswind, trying to hold the wheel when there's a surge. There's lots and lots of this involved. So whether that was an interesting comparison to you or not, well, you can let me know in the comment section down below. But I'm sure one of the things that you're all going to point out is the major difference between riding an event with 1 or 2 people around you and racing a race with 200 other cyclists who all want to win or get to the front of a peloton. That sitting shoulder to shoulder, 50 kilometers per hour or 80 kilometers per hour down a descent on twisty, narrow British roads, it's just something you really cannot replicate in something like the Haute Route Alps or anywhere else. The pro race is mentally stressful as well as physically. The Haute Route, yes, it's mentally stressful, but certainly not as much as physically stressful. During the Haute Route, come stage 4, 5, 6, you tend to find a rhythm. Every day is the same. You have breakfast at the same time. You wake up, you go through your routine, you get on the bike, you do the stage, you get home. There's a direct comparison there to how a professional would live on a stage race. It was very much a similar thing. The only difference being that you didn't have to drive 3 or 4 hours after the stage to get to your hotel, which would generally be really close to the start of the following stage. Now, I don't really know which one is more painful, because the pain you sort of inflict on yourself during the Haute Route is very much, you decide how hard you go. If you're tired, you decide how much damage you want to do, essentially. When you're in a professional race, though, it's dictated. You either keep up or you don't. As I said earlier, I do think that making these constant accelerations or changes of pace over time, they can be very fatiguing. The difference with the Haute Route, I think mentally, it's probably more challenging pushing up those climbs than it is to just hold the wheel in front of you in a race when there's also some draft there as well if you hold that wheel. When you're going up big mountains for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're on your own or you're with a small group and someone pushes the pace, yes, you can try and keep up, but there's far more chance of a split happening on a climb than there is on a flat road. So the motivation of holding, and pushing yourself to stay with a group on a flat road, I think is much greater. It's much easier to get that motivation. When you're going up a climb, there's a lot of factors to think about. It's a long way to the top of the climb. You've got to pace yourself. You've got to look after yourself. You can't just respond to what people are doing around you. Now, one thing I took away from the Haute Route, and maybe something I didn't expect, was just how much it does feel like you're racing a professional stage race. But in terms of the format, in terms of the route, in terms of the logistics, how it's all organised, it's very much you just have one job, and that's to ride your bike, check into your hotel, recover, eat, sleep, and do it all over again the next day. It does give you the experience of racing as a professional athlete over a 1-week stage race, but without the dangers per se, without the added stress of traveling between stages. Okay, apart from the cancelled stage, we have to drive 3.5 hours into Italy, but we would generally be making those trips by bike. I think in terms of nutrition and everything that encompasses like daily performance, endurance, and pushing yourself, it is somewhat the ultimate experience to be put into that position where you can be a professional athlete. Yes, okay, it's not exactly like doing the real thing, but when I did the Haute Route Alps, it certainly felt like, to a certain extent, I was back in that machine, if you will. And I actually really enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, this little breakdown and insight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.